Hello, Mike. Hear anyone on my side, so I'm not too sure if I'm live or not, but hello, everyone. Hello, guys. I'm not too sure if I'm on the air. I know that we've been having some technical difficulties, but my name is Roman Edmond, aka Longbottoms. Can anyone hear me or see me? I'm actually, hello all. Hey, again, then, if you can see me, I'd like to say hello, everyone. My name is Roman Edmond, aka Longbottoms. I'm talking to you now today um, for Slurv every Sunday between 11 and noon Eastern Standard Time to provide you some answer, field any questions for you, provide you some content in order for you guys to create a winning lineup. With that said, I know we've been having some technical difficulties where myself and my counterpart are supposed to go back and forth and hear and field questions and then respond to them accordingly. I can't hear from him on the other side, Mike. And so I do have access to the chat functionality. So if anyone has questions that they would want me to field and answer, by all means, please shoot me an email and then we'll go from there. So I guess I can talk a little bit about myself and I guess some of my success in the DFS industry and go from there. Uh, Again, I'm Roman Edmond, aka Longbottoms. I'm on FanDuel and the other DFS operators. I've been doing DFS in general for since 2014. Primarily, I focus in on Major League Baseball and NFL football. Uh, this last December, I ended up qualifying for the World Fantasy Championship, and I was successful in earning the top position, the first spot there, 20 entries, and ever since then, I've been reaching out and working with various organizations, providing content and information, also trying to provide or be an ambassador to the DFS here. As a lot of people in the world doesn't know exactly what we truly represent. If I have an opportunity, I do that as such as well. So I'm going to look to see if there's any questions that Mike Wagner has sent a pretty good email question. His email question is, what's your general approach when selecting wideouts and what stats do you look for? So let me just talk about wideouts in general. This is based on last year as well as 2014 and my experience. What I've noticed is, and I don't think it's any rocket science, that the NFL is turning into, or it has turned into, a pass happy league. With that said, there's more productions that comes out of the wideout space, which means then there's going to be a lot more points that they can actually accrue, which means those are the areas that you should really target forcefully and ensure that you hit on right on the dot. So in respect to my general approach for wideouts, one of the things I really look at, and I think most people look at, is the targets, the number of targets that the individual receives on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, targets equal the possibility, or increased targets equals the increased possibility of good things happening, meaning catches and yards after the catches and touchdowns. So that's probably the one thing that you need to recognize. in respect to the general approach for looking for wideouts. For me, also, one of the things I like to look at also, depending if I'm going to be participating in a GPP tournament or cash tournament, is the variance of play, wide receiver or the wideout. And what I mean by that is I want to look at the ups and downs in respect to production on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis. And so if you have a wideout or wide receiver that has big upside and they may provide you 40 points on one game and zero on another, that is definitely not a wide receiver that you would want to insert in your cash games. You know, you would rather have someone that has a pretty decent upside, but you can always count on them. And so I think that's very important. Classic example of that is, let's say, AJ Green versus Julio Jones. And this is in my perspective, and me doing the research. I think they both are phenomenal athletes, and I think if you look at the draft board, you probably have Julio Jones rated higher. But from my perspective and from what I've noticed, AJ Green has a higher floor, may not be a higher ceiling, but he definitely has a higher floor. And you really can count on him for, let's say, about 100 yards and a touchdown on uh, every Sunday, every Sunday. Now, in regards to Julio Jones, the guy's phenomenal. He may score 3 touchdowns in one game and have 190 yards rushing or catching, I'm sorry, or receiving. But what I've noticed is that he's also had these duds, three, you know, 3 catches or receptions for 30 yards or 40 yards. And that's not something that I have, a comfortable feeling rostering at times. I can tell you that. And what you notice is, I like to look at is, or anticipate is, the number or the percentage owned by a wideout. So, for example, with Julio, you really get burned by him not really producing, and then at the same time, that like 70% or 60% or 50% of the field is owned by him. So even if he does go off, it's not like you're going to jump ahead in the leaderboard. So that's another thing I really look at. I try to anticipate, and you can do that by looking at past weeks or just kind of being on the various chat rooms and listening to the various podcasts to see what are the general feelings of which players are going to be on. Indication if this person is going to be over-owned or under-owned or things of that nature. So that is what I would say you should primarily focus in respect to whiteouts. Okay, so Mike, I think, has another question. And the question is, do you look at targets that each receiver has been getting to help with your projections? Yes. And that might have been a question that he sent out earlier before myself explaining. But yes, I think it's very helpful to see the number of targets that individual receives in general. And then also with that said, you know, the quality of that quarterback, the quality of the matchup that individual will be facing, all that has a big factor in making your decision. If your wide receiver is facing a team that loves to run, that may not be an optimal play for you. If it's a high scoring affair, then yes, that may be good. If the Vegas line says it's going to be a close game, you're going to love that because that's going to be a track meet. And not only do you focus in on that receiver that's on that team that you think may be in that track meet, what you love to do maybe is to couple him with the other wide receiver on the other end. So you may have a situation where it may be, 35-28, at the end of the game. And so that's what, 9 touchdowns. And you have 2 players that may have a couple on one side and 3 on the other. And that works wonders. Okay. What other questions do we have here? And one of the things that I'd like to say, at least for me, uh, now that I've been focused on in general, because that's what I do now. Currently, the Major League Baseball season's in full swing or towards the latter half of it, and football season is quickly approaching. For me, I've been kind of juggling and having challenges of still being able to do my due diligence and researching information in respect to Major League Baseball, but at the same time, getting up to speed with the NFL content. So, in the last week or so, I've been doing that transition into NFL, pretty much exclusively, at least trying to. So, it's more like a 60-40 split right now, but because there's still some good tournaments out there for Major League Baseball, and I have all this baseline knowledge that is already there. So that's where I'm juggling both games, both sports. So that's just one thing that I would imagine a lot of DFSers out there are competing against and trying to. Another question I see, and thank you, Mike, for shooting these questions via the chat. And if anyone else have any questions, feel free to shoot those questions through the chat. His next question is, how much do you use Vegas? Do you target the running backs that are favorite in a big spread? Ah, this one is a good question. How much do I use Vegas? I, I don't know. I don't think I use it too much. I've published a book this month. It's called Winning in Fantasy Football, Tips from the World Champion. And basically, it's an outline of my selections for that championship roster. And it talks about the mindset of why I selected certain players and why I didn't. And in one of the areas, I talk about the Vegas lines, and I think that uh, too much people hold too much credence into the Vegas line. From what I know about Vegas lines, the whole idea of Vegas lines is to create a number that creates equal actions on both sides of the bet. And if that's the case, the idea is to ensure that 50% of the people like this side and 50% like that side, which then in turns means that the Vegas line is not trying to actually predict the outcome of the game, but trying to get to a number that they can get equal action on both sides. And I think that's a very important concept for people to think about. Have a team that attention and everyone sees them and they played a game just the other week, let's say the New England Patriots, and they smacked down a pretty good opponent that week. What's going to happen is everyone's going to think this team is unbeatable and super great, and Vegas is going to have to create a line that's going to provide more points for their next opponent, even more than what they probably truly deserve in order to create that equal action. So then you taking that Vegas line, as blind faith, I think sometimes skews games that may be closer or underdogs that have a chance of winning. So from my perspective, what I tried to do is I'm not necessarily as big on the number, who's going to win and how many points. More so, I'm into the totals and trying to get a cursory feel if this is going to be a high scoring game or low scoring game. And then based on that, breaking it down game by game. So I don't think it's, I don't use an end all be all. And to be honest with you, unless I'm going to Vegas and I'm going to, make a wager on a side or total, that's where obviously it really counts. I just use it as another tool and, not a real tool, like other people. Something similar to that in baseball, I think you have a lot of folks that are big on BVP, batter versus pitcher, and they're like, oh no, you know, such and such, kills Clayton Kershaw. They had like 14 at bats and they have 7 hits off Clayton Kershaw. And I think hates the BVP number, and it may be just variance randomness or whatever the case may be. But a lot of people go all in on that, and there's multiple factors on why BVP may not even be effective. I mean, somebody like Clayton Kershaw has been in the league for so many years, and if you have a player that's been in the league for so many years as well, you don't know if all of his at bats against Clayton Kershaw, most of them have been when Clayton Kershaw was a rookie, you know, and when he was a stud, or the guy that we're talking about is a 12-year veteran. Obviously, his skill has degraded since he first came into the league, and so the BVP numbers may not even be of relevance. So, okay. Next question. What is your approach to week one? Do you ramp up your play at all due to the excitement, or is it just another week? Wow, that's actually a fantastic question. And Mike, if you have more questions, keep them coming. I guess it's a one-on-one, uh, consultative approach today. Mike and I are going back and forth, and until other people jump in. But in respect to week one approach, in respect to week one approach, I think for me, someone that's a little bit more mature in the industry, this is definitely a week that we would definitely want action in, that we definitely are gonna press and participate more. I think what you said earlier, there is a extra excitement about the league, about DFS, about NFL football. So you'll definitely have more folks trying it out, more folks that may not be, uh, you know, people that's been there season after season. You will have new people giving it a try. So I think that's definitely an opportunity there. I do also think that this is an opportunity week one, week two. You do your due diligence and you do your research, that you have a leg up over everyone, even over experts like myself, if those folks don't do the due diligence. And what I mean is, you're going to have a lot of folks that look at last year's stats, or potentially they really focus on preseason, and they don't dig deeper and kind of going into the numbers, and going on the web and constructing game flow. And from what I will tell you is, you'll have folks that automatically would check off and pick Adrian Peterson because he's the most expensive running back, or Todd Gurley, based on that, and not incorporating DFS football principles and philosophies that have worked over time, as well as not doing the key due diligence and research that is required in order to be successful. So week one, I don't think it's just another week. I think it's definitely an opportunity, a leg up for the folks that want to work hard to kind of uh, add to their bankroll in order to survive the week-to-week ups and downs that you will definitely face over the NFL season. So I see another question from Mike. It says, what's your thoughts on paying up for quarterbacks? Do you like to pay up for them in cash games? In the past, I thought that paying up for quarterbacks made sense, but after closer deliberation and research, horrible idea to pay up for quarterbacks. I think that what you look at when you look at even the different pricing, um, outputs and scoring that you get, it's really hard for the top rated quarterback to outshine the second, third, fourth, fifth base rated quarterback in performance week after week. That's my general opinion. And then, coupled in with that, if you pay up for a high, um, you pay up for a quarterback, what you may run into is that quarterback may not produce, and not produce value will automatically kill you, because you won't be able to spend on positions that, from my perspective, are pretty much guaranteed, like we mentioned earlier, the wide receiver spot. So the key for me is to look for value and look for quarterbacks that are in a nice spot. I think an example of that was for my championship roster, I actually selected Blake Bortles and didn't necessarily pay up. There must have been 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other quarterbacks ranked or priced higher than he was, and yet and still I liked his spot, and I thought that he would be able to produce adequate enough points where the surplus of not paying up, I could rejig and move that surplus into other spots and be able to create a more optimal lineup. So again, I don't think you should pay up for quarterbacks. And for the lucky folks that are listening or that will be listening, quickly looking at, and this is from FanDuel perspective. I've looked at FanDuel pretty much exclusively so far, but looking at week one's slate and looking at the quarterback, from my perspective, and maybe it won't be rocket science in a couple weeks, but to me, the only quarterback that you should really think about at this point, and which would make sense, and I don't think it matters if it's cash or GPP. Even though people are gonna say with GPP you can pick anyone and all that other stuff, but in my mind it would be Eli Manning. Eli Manning is 7,200 on FanDuel. I mean, he's the 19th highest quarterback on FanDuel. Yikes, that doesn't make any sense. I think he's near Alex Smith and uh, Brock Osweiler in that doldrum, that price point for 7,200. From my perspective, what I'll be doing is locking up Eli Manning and going from there. Sense. So the algorithms, whatever the case may be, the number scheme doesn't make any sense. Lock up Eli Manning. They play the Cowboys at Dallas. And for you Vegas folks that love looking at the line is already 49.5. So that's a high scoring game in general. So I think one of the easy things to do now is to lock him up for 7,200. He'll produce. He has, Odell Beckham and that whole thing, and it's going to be a track meet with the NFC East. Big game, afternoon slot. He'll get 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns that adequately pay off, and then you can take that other money and you can force feed it into your defense or your tight end or what have you. So from my perspective, that's a nugget for 2016 on FanDuel, is just to lock up Eli Manning on quarterback. So looking for any other questions. And again, the reason why we're challenged here is that we've had some challenging stuff to do. So sorry about that screenshot area. So what other questions you have? I'm just having a lot of things going on. You need to go back and sit down before, okay?
Fine.
Go now, please. I'm on TV. So sorry about that, guys. I have my little one. He's running around and that whole thing. So I'm gonna close the door. Give me a sec. Still waiting. Thank you. Still waiting for more questions. But one of the things that I've been doing, in the interim, in order to kind of set up for week one, and I think week one, and we'll go back and say, is week one any other week? I would say it isn't any other week, in regards to week one is the week that you have the most opportunities to do research, right? So even now, even now we're doing research, and we could have done it 2 months ago or whatever the case may be. And week two, week three, you have, like, let's say, that week turnaround time in order to make things happen. So this is the opportunity where you can really gather a lot of content and that you can really make things happen. And so for me, even though haven't said, to me, Vegas lines are that important, like, important, I still identify the Vegas lines and looking at them now, an eye on them to see how drastically they change from one side or the other. I think that that'll be important information. Now I'm also kind of going through the lineup or the various games, and seeing games that I will look at focusing and picking on players or picking on defenses or whatever the case may be. So, um, you know, that's kind of where I'm going with that. I do see some statement that says if I play Eli, is it 100% certain that you pair him up with Beckham, playing him without him? So I would say conventional wisdom is definitely you would want to stack your wide receiver or your quarterback with, let's say the number one wide receiver. So that makes perfect sense. But I play GPP, and I'm a little different than most. I wouldn't say it's 100% that I would pair him up with him. And that's kind of dangerous, but at the same time, if Odell Beckham doesn't have a huge game, and maybe I pair him up with, another wide receiver or tight end, and that person goes off, I mean, there's going to be a huge separation in me and, everyone else. And what I would say is, if I don't stack Eli Manning with Beckham, at the end of the day, you do get some points because he is the quarterback throwing it to Beckham. And if I can find, to me, perhaps to have maybe a little bit better upside over Beckham, then that's going to be a contrarian play, and my roster would be definitely different. Where I do have Eli Manning, but I don't, couple him in with Odell Beckham, and let's say I have AJ Green, and maybe Julio Jones, because I'm definitely going to have one top-notch receiver outside of, let's say, ODB. So I would have, let's say, Julio Jones, and then I would have AJ Green, and then Eli Manning. And, Eli Manning may have a great game, and Odell may have a good game or a great game, like a touchdown and 130 yards. That's great. But instead, I pivoted, and now I have AJ Green that ended up with 190 and 2 touchdowns. So it's definitely something, to consider. These are kind of the thinking that you need to go into your mind when creating a roster. Sometimes it's not just the conventional wisdom, but you got to break down the philosophy and kind of dig deeper in trying to understand what typically people do, and is there a way I may be able to pivot and still be able to have that high upside, but make it a little more different than what people typically see. So next question, do you have any breakout player predictions? Will Zeke Elliott be the monster everyone thinks he will be? So do I have any breakout predictions? Looking at the roster, yeah, I would say, yeah. One of the things I like, people I like is Latavius Murray. I think he's an awesome back. I think he had a bad year last year, and even with that, I think he had the fourth most touches as a back. I think that DeAndre Washington is the rookie, is on the team now, and everyone's kind of writing him off. But I think Latavius Murray is going to get the rock still. I think he's in a nice offense that would be able to provide him opportunities near the end zone. He's a big back. I think he's like 6'2", 230. So during the red zone targets when they're running, it's going to be him, definitely not DeAndre Washington. So I really like him in nice spots throughout the season. So I definitely will be looking at him. I also like in regards to Zeke Elliott. I think he will be doing fine. I think he's gonna have a pretty good year. You got to think about it. Darryl McFadden and DeMarco Murray were in a backfield in front of that talented offensive line, and they ran like bonkers. And ever since then they've left, and they haven't done really anything on their other teams, right? Or McFadden earlier and Murray now. So I do think Ezekiel Elliott will will thrive. He's been a good running back in college at Ohio State, and do think he's gonna have a pretty good year. I'm maybe not as high on him as other people are, but we'll give him a try. Tight end, I like he's been good to me last year, and I'll still go with him. Is Delaney Walker? He's Mr. Consistent. He is a great tight end, great hands. Always seems to be open. Marcus Mariota seems to like to throw to him, and once a couple stats. I think he was the #1 targeted tight end last year, which is pretty remarkable. But then also he was the #14 targeted receiver slash tight end or anyone last year. So all the receivers that you could think of, Odell Beckham and all that other stuff, Delaney Walker was #14. So that goes a long way. And these are stats and research that you need to uncover, because I think like the common person would have no clue that Delaney Walker was a #14th targeted player, you know, um, in the NFL. So I think that's very important. Uh, One thing that I'd like to, let's say, that wide receiver and running back dynamics, and I think that people are going back and forth and trying, even with their draft, who should I pick? Is there a difference and all that other stuff? There was information stats that I discovered that if you look at like the top 30 wide receivers, you look at the top 30 running backs in the last 3 years, 89% of the wide receivers made their value in regards to fantasy. They made their value or exceeded that, whereas only 69% of the running backs have. So that's significant. So it's saying that you pick a quality wide receiver, and that can be season long draft or daily. You have a much higher percentage of that person doing what he needs to do compared to a running back. And so when it comes to push or shove, when you're building that roster and you have a chance of picking a great wide receiver or a great running back, the data shows that you should pick the wide receiver. So again, I think that's a strategy that I follow that's made me successful. And that's definitely, I think, a nugget that you should, if you're not going to take anything away from what I've said today, that you do. Question: what are your thoughts on Thomas Roll? Does he get bumped down a bit in season long because of Christian Michael noise I've been hearing? Yeah, I think he gets bumped down in general. From my perspective, I'm not big on any of the Seattle Seahawks running backs. I think we may get a running back by committee, a true one with 3, 4 running backs behind there. While a great running back, great athlete, is coming back, from injury. So we don't even know what to expect from him. Christian Michael, I think, is realized that this is probably his last opportunity to stay in the league, and so he's been lights out. So from my perspective, I would have some caution in respect to selecting Thomas Rose, especially for season long, and kind of see where things materialize. And again, from my perspective, Seattle's probably going to just run by committee or run the the hot hand. I think they're a type of team, and Pete Carroll is a type of coach that really doesn't care about superstar image and things of that nature, and just wants to win, unlike other teams may. And so, if there's a guy like myself that happens to, let's say carry the pop, carry the rock, and I go off, he may just have me run the rest of the season. So I would, and that was just a crazy example. But what I really wanted to say is, there's plenty of other running backs in the league. I would stay away from them, and I actually would be happy if my competitors would roster him, to be honest with you. What other questions that we have here? And again, what's going to happen is that every Sunday I'll be here on Slurv between 11 and 12. So as you are creating your roster or deciding between one person or the other, this may be an opportunity where you may, shoot me a chat line, and I can kind of respond if that makes sense. What my perspective is or opinion is on things. I see a question in the chat. Am I a big Todd Gurley fan this year? I'm a big Todd Gurley fan every year, I think. I think he's going to be 70 years old, and I'll still be a Todd Gurley fan. He's my guy. I mean, he's helped me. He helped me win my championship, most definitely. And I was on him when I thought it made sense. The matchup made sense, and he had the best game of his young career. And so, I was like on his Twitter. Saw some pictures. He has like the same car I have now, so I thought we were like car brothers. But anyway, Todd Gurley, I think, has an opportunity to be even better than he was last year. From my perspective, this is why. I think that the Rams, with their move to LA, are going to try to juice, and they're going to try to ensure that they win, and they're going to ensure that their big star, which is Todd Gurley, hands down, performs well. And one of the things that I noticed was last year, Todd Gurley was not positioned well to succeed or given enough opportunities off the backfield to catch balls. And I think that's going to be a new dimension that the Rams are going to implement this year. With potentially the rookie quarterback having the ball, and rookie quarterbacks being very hesitant and wanting to throw the ball in short dumps to the tight end or little screens, what have you. I see that as being something that Todd Gurley will be implemented in the Rams' future. And then if you look at Todd Gurley in Georgia, he's had some pretty splendid seasons there where he had, I think maybe 44 catches in a year out the backfield. I think that's don't take me exactly, but he had some significant. He definitely had a significant season where he caught the ball, and he does well. And out of the backfield, giving him the ball, that's all you need. That's all you want. So I think he's definitely in for a big season. Again, for me, I like to look at the matchup and see what makes sense, because I think everyone's going to be in love with Todd Gurley, and you don't want to be in a position where he's highly owned and you're on him, and you can't get that separation. So I definitely thank you for that question. Here, what I also would say is that I think the next time I'm going to be talking will be, I think is it September 11th? I think that's the Sunday for football season. So I'll definitely have more of a preview to provide some insight on some of the themes that I see going on for that week. I've done that for baseball, of kind of getting like a global or a league theme, and saying, hey, I see this may be a defensive-minded week. Think about this, or whatever the case may be. So, keep that in mind, and please come on Sundays at 11 a.m. I'll be here from 11 a.m. to noon, and then I Probably will construct my roster after that. If I haven't, or at least kind of finalize it, off to maybe a local bar or maybe go home or whatever the case may be to watch the game. I'm still trying to figure out the cadence on that. So we'll go with that. Another question is, have I been playing any preseason DFS? Again, my factors are I'm still stuck in baseball, hard, I'm grinding hard on that. So, trying to pick up any information from DFS. Preseason football is just kind of crazy. I did throw in a couple of rosters and I got beat like as I should because I did that just to see things and it didn't work out. And again, there's a gift space that you need in order to be successful in preseason football. You're gonna have to understand each week kind of dictates who's going to play more and what they're trying to accomplish, and then you're also going to have to get into the head of the coach or the team's philosophy on what they're trying to actually execute. And so it gets all complicated, and that itself could be its own industry where people could be very successful for those, let's say, 4 weeks, and then call it a day, and then vacation in the Bahamas. I mean, as you would see, there's certain people that win all the time there because they know that make them successful. So another question is, when playing cash games, how much do you play head to head versus 50-50? So for 50-50 versus head to head, one of the things that I would say is that I rather do. I'm not a cash game person in general. In the past, I've been strictly tournament. That's my claim to fame. I've done that the last couple of years, and I've done pretty well on taking down some smaller tournaments. So this year, I have a bigger bankroll. I'm kind of contemplating, should I just refocus in on cash games? And if I would do that, one of the things I would want to do is kind of max out on all the 50-50 games out there. And then, if I need to go into head to head, and I guess the simple reason for me, or maybe even for you, would be that if you do create a great roster and you do have, the due diligence in order to create this nice roster, you have a higher chance of cashing, compete against 30 people as opposed to competing against one person that may happen to have that one person that went off some random way, and you had a great lineup and you still lose. So definitely my recommendation for you would be to push 50-50 if you're going to do cash. And then as you evolve, you can then start trying to play certain people or, play heads, head to head and things of that nature. So 50-50 is the way to be. Okay. So I think we're going to just wind things down now. But one of the things, again, I wanted to say is thanks for your participation. Thanks for coming. If you want, please reach out to me. You can follow me at Niche Guy on Twitter, NITCHGUY on Twitter. I've stood up a website, romanedmond.com. You can look at that as well. One of the things I also do is personal development. So I'm a personal development accelerator. And I guess the bottom line, what that means is I help individuals strive and get to points of their dreams and aspirations. So it may be on a financial aspect or some of the things about, let's say, some of the vices that they have and figuring out a game plan on eradicating or mitigating some of that stuff. I've done that for the last 5 years, helped out a lot of friends and family, and opportunity in a bigger platform. I thought about expanding it a little bit more. So if that's something that you're interested in as well, and kind of refocusing and changing your life, that's something else that I do as well. I've been spending a good quality of my time doing that as well. So again, I'm so excited to be here on Slurv. If please again, there's other great DFS pros throughout the week that are providing wisdom. I think that getting all our different perspectives and kind of bringing things in could just make you like an ultimate DFS player. So don't forget, we have like Adam Levitan and Davis Maddox and uh, a whole host of other people that are sharing their knowledge to you. So never forget that. So thank you guys, and I look forward to a great successful season with you guys. Bye bye.